How's it going, everybody? This is Jason Ostrowski, and welcome to another episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast. Today's podcast is one that I've really been looking forward to because we are diving deep into the soul of branding, messaging, and what it truly takes to stand out in today's crowded real estate space. And there's no better guest to do that with than a true thought leader in our industry. His name is Brian Boero. Many of you may know Brian as founder and CEO of 1000 Watt, a branding and strategy agency that's focused on the housing market. Brian's been at the forefront of the real estate industry for nearly 3 decades now, from his days as president of Inman or as the CEO of the e-signature and document management software company VREO. Brian's no BS perspective challenges agents and companies alike to dig deeper and think differently. In this episode, we're talking about what it really means to build a memorable brand, how agents can break through the noise, and why telling your story the right way might just be the biggest differentiator in your business. So let's get into today's episode with my special guest, Brian Boero. His influence and reach has been felt in the real estate industry for close to 3 decades now. Brian, it's so great to have you with us today. How are things out there in the Bay Area this week?
Things are terrific, Jay. Thank you for having me. And thank you for establishing up front that I'm very, very old.
Well, if you're old, then I'm old because...
No, 3 decades. Oh, my God.
Yeah. I know, we were talking about, you had mentioned how I won't say your age, but I'm right there with you. And I know things tend to get a little harder as we age, but you look very spry this morning.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're gonna talk about standing out in a crowded real estate industry, and I know you've spoken about this many times. I've listened to actually other podcasts with you speaking about this, but I think it never stops being a relevant topic in our industry because there is so much copycatism out there. There is so many that herd mentality when it comes to marketing, when it comes to branding. And I want to touch upon a couple things with you today regarding this because you have very strong feelings when it comes to making yourself stand out in a crowded field. And so I want to start with a quote from you. And I was listening to a podcast recently, and you said the essence of branding and marketing is saying or doing what your competitors are unwilling to say or unable to do. Can you talk about that concept a little bit and kind of how you feel about that?
Yeah, for sure. So by that, I mean that, look, whether you're selling a product or whether you're selling a service and whether you're in pharmaceuticals or medical or real estate, differentiation and cultivating a unique value story is really, it's fundamental stuff. And in real estate, we're in this situation where we have way too many people chasing too little business. And we've had that situation always, but it has become particularly acute over the last few years. We got inventory going up now, but still, we're going to have 1.5 million realtors, maybe a little bit less. NAR doesn't disclose their numbers anymore, chasing, another year of 4 million resale home sales. And so what are you going to do in order to get, if you're good, your fair share of that pretty small pie? And the only way to do that is to differentiate yourself and show unique differentiated value. Because the general public, we do lots of consumer research, really does not know how to pick a real estate agent. They do not know what a good real estate agent is. They do not know what a bad real estate agent is. They just pick someone usually that someone recommends to them, their nephew, their friend, whoever their neighbor used last time. So that's what I meant by saying that. And a thought process or almost an exercise like that of trying to think through, hey, what am I uniquely prepared to say that most of the people in my neighborhood, my subdivision, my marketplace are not prepared to say? And what is it that I can do better demonstrably than most other practitioners in my area? And answering those questions is how you get at building a story of differentiated value.
Whether you're a brand new agent or whether you've been in the business for 20 years and you could be struggling, right? You need to find your place. What do you do well? What do you stand out doing? How do you lean into that? These things of, marketing and branding. And, there's so many mistakes that are being made by agents out there. What do you think that the biggest mistake is that you see real estate agents making today when they're trying to gain traction with their branding and marketing?
They're not thinking about their branding and their marketing from a place of understanding at a deep level their customer. And that's, again, this is like business building and marketing and brand building 101, right? If you have an idea of who your prospective customer is, understand them at a really deep level, what motivates them, what scares them, what brings them joy, and then speak to that in your marketing. And as an industry, generally speaking, we don't really take the time to do that. We just send out the postcard, we post the Instagram reel, we do whatever it is we do for marketing. And we tend to do the same old things without sort of looking at our customer, looking at where they're at right now, and then developing our differentiated value and finding the connection between those two things. Like, this is not a radical proposition that I'm putting forth here, Jay. This is like basic stuff that in real estate, because of how this business is set up, most practitioners never take the time to do, because we're always in this deal to deal, closing to closing, sort of stressed, panicked mentality that prevents the sort of deep thinking that builds brands and sustainable value over time.
And I know you had mentioned about how you find somebody that's successful in the business, or agents typically see somebody that's successful, and now they just want to mimic or follow exactly what that agent's doing. And that doesn't necessarily work. What works for one agent is not necessarily going to work for another. For instance, some people just play in the right sandboxes, right? They grew up, they had the right connections and business into their lap. That's not always going to be the case. You got to work for what you're doing. And you're so right, Brian. I always like to with my team to say, picture if you're opening up just a pizza place. You're opening up a pizza shop. Mm-hmm. How are you going to get people in the door, right? How are you going to market to these people to get them to come in and try your pizza, right? That's a very simplified thing. But a lot of times we don't think in terms of, yes, we are business owners. We're owning our business. We have to go grab that business and we have to differentiate ourselves from every other pizza place that's out there. Yeah. How are we going to do that? Is that a fair analogy?
That's a fair analogy. And, there are lots of pizza places. But think about it, in your metro, in Philadelphia, for example. I mean, how many MLS members are there? There's thousands.
Oh, my God.
Right? Thousands and thousands. And they're all chasing a very limited amount of business. And in order to do that, to stand out from the thousands of other agents competing for that small world of business, what are you going to do? And most people, they do what I call checkbox marketing. They're like, okay, I got to send the direct mail. I got to shovel stuff into the socials because I'm told that I have to do that. Maybe I'm good at it and prepared for it and qualified for it. Maybe I'm not. I do an email newsletter. Maybe I call FSBOs, maybe I door knock, whatever the tactics are, we can all do the same things, right? And that's fine. There's such a thing as a best practice. There's such a thing of tried and true, but that it needs to be balanced by cultivating what I said before. What is it you are uniquely prepared to do that differentiates you from others? What is the best platform, the best channel for that unique value to be communicated to the marketplace? That's how to think about this stuff strategically.
Yeah. And I just from your real estate adjacent at all times. You said, your wife is an agent, right? You're always around us. Yes. And I feel bad for you, Brian. I'm sorry.
I love
to deal with us.
Look, I wouldn't have stayed in this business 28 years if I didn't love it. Love as an agent. I I love this business. It's so meaningful and it's crazy. And I mean, I'm not bored yet after 28 years.
Well, that's one thing. It is never boring. I will say that. And I want to know from your perspective of being kind of on the periphery, seeing what agents are doing from 36,000 feet. What stands out to you? Like when you see an agent doing something and say, it's authentic and what makes it memorable when an agent does something, you're like, that's it. You know what I mean? Like that's the juice. That's what you should be doing more of.
Yeah. I know I sound like a broken record here, but think about your mailbox. Okay. We all have a mailbox. To this day in 2025, because it can be effective, you and we both walk out to our mailbox every day, and there's probably some piece of real estate marketing in there. And we already know what that's going to be. Just listed, just sold, recent sales in the neighborhood, get a free home valuation, the usual stuff. And you and I are probably a little bit weird. We probably actually look at these things, but the vast majority of human beings take that and they walk it right to the recycle bin and it's gone. Okay. You have a millisecond to stand out and catch somebody's attention with something different. What are you going to say to that person that breaks the pattern of static that surrounds people as far as real estate marketing? You have a millisecond to do that. What are you going to say that's different, that grabs that person? So that's what would stand out to me. And that's the thing that I think we generally miss. We do the things that are done, and it has inertia. And we do them because they've always been done. And we do them because they work for somebody, or we do them because the technology that we use makes it easy to do those things. And we don't think about another common concept in marketing, pattern interruption. Okay. We have banner blindness, ad blindness. When we look at, websites that we go to, we don't see the banners. They're gone. Our brains have filtered them out because we've seen a gazillion of them over our lifetimes. Same thing with most real estate marketing. How do you break that pattern? How do you interrupt it and break through? That's the question to ask yourself.
You would mention, I think one thing that we suffer from is we don't ask ourselves the right questions when it comes to marketing. Like you had said, like what's going to stand out? I always like to think of me personally when I see good marketing, I'm a sucker for good marketing. So I like to go like, let's say I just go like into Whole Foods, right? And I'm looking at the beverage aisle.
Yeah.
I like iced tea. And so I unsweetened iced tea, I drink it all day. And I'm probably going to try a new iced tea product based on the marketing that I see, right? The label, like, does it stand out? Like, are they good at marketing? Is the name clever, right? Yeah. I think of these things, and then I try and think about real estate the same way. Mm-hmm. If I'm receiving something like you said, the mailers, I'm chuckling with them. I receive probably 10 mailers a day from agents, and it's just so repetitive. So I've heard you say that, we all know, or hopefully all of us are familiar with Simon Sinek and, finding your why, right?
Yeah.
And you said, maybe that's not the right question. Maybe don't start with why, start with how.
Yeah.
And what did you mean by that, if I can ask?
Well, I read that book. Many of us did. It's a great book, very smart. I think though it's not a good prescription for real estate. Okay. Find your why. You hear that all the time. This is my why. What's your why? Okay, fine. But what that leads most real estate people to is the sort of undifferentiated, platitudinous, gauzy, I'm in it because I love people. I'm in it to help people find the dream of home ownership. I'm in it to help people move to their next chapter. Okay, how many times have you seen that in the last week? 100 times. Okay. So that may be the truth about why you're in this business. And that's a beautiful thing. That is not the stuff of differentiation. What I would suggest instead is to lead with how, because again, we've done tons of research on consumers here at 1000 Watt over the past 5 years. People have no idea what a good agent does to get them to a good outcome. Conversely, they also don't know why their nephew may be a knucklehead and get it wrong, and they shouldn't hire that nephew to sell their house. So if you tell people, I'm going to get you to the best price in the least amount of time, well, tell me how. What is it that you do? And more importantly, tell me how you do it differently or better than most of the other agents that are in my ear about listing my home. We skip over that how part because most agents have in their head, it's sort of, they just do what they do. Great agents just do what they do. And they don't think to communicate that process and that what outward. And that is the raw material of a differentiated value proposition.
And I think we need to let them into our lives more. Like you had said, like, what do we do on a day-to-day basis? Most people don't know what a real estate agent does when it comes to what they're working on day to day. And what we go through and the way we negotiate and, how it's so vitally important to hire the right agent for the job. And that we do such a poor job conveying that message. We all
totally. And it's and you've probably seen this, Jay. You've seen this actually play out in your business. You've seen it in what NAR tells us about consumer choices. People don't take the choice of an agent seriously.
Absolutely not.
They don't. And why don't they? Because they don't really know the stakes. They don't know, as I said, how a good agent will save them tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars and how a knucklehead agent will lose them 10 or 100. And that is on us. The agent community has not educated the consumers on what a good agent does. And well, that's an opportunity. It's a wide open space.
I think we haven't told enough stories, right? That's one thing about real estate agents. We all have stories, right? Let's talk about a story where you actually saved that seller from tragedy, right? Or you got them $50,000 extra from something that you've done to either promote that property, negotiate that property, or, handle things the right way when it could have gone the other way,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, therein lies the opportunity to break through the noise, is to tell those kinds of stories, explain to people how you get them to where they want to go. And, sending out just another postcard or posting just another home tour on Instagram, like that's not really going to do it.
Yeah. And you said, to be able to have a good brand, it should be able to telegraph meaning. Yeah. What are some of the key elements of a great real estate brand that telegraphs meaning, in your opinion?
Well, what is the feeling? And it may be fleeting and subtle. What is the feeling that you want to convey when people apprehend you and your brand in the world, right? And that takes time. And that involves lots of things. It involves words, it involves design, it involves visual identity, it involves messaging, and all of those things. Those are the things that carry your differentiated value story into the world. Okay. So if you're Jay and you are the best listing agent in X neighborhood because you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that nobody else can touch you on, then how do you create the words and the story and the visuals to support that and carry that value proposition into the world? Right. So that's sort of how the mechanics of all of this work. Instead, what we usually do in agent world is we do the same old things, and then we kind of have a maybe kind of sort of pretty visual identity put together, a little logo, and we just throw it out there. And those things are not built with thought and strategy in mind.
That's a great point. And I think that, again, it's following that herd mentality, right? You see this person do it, I have to do it this way. Instead of like when everybody else goes right, you go left and try
Yeah.
something a little bit different. And
Yeah.
sometimes people don't want to take that chance, right? They don't want to be daring. They don't want to, that herd mentality, they don't want to stand out because for
No,
fear of failure, right?
it's a really hard thing to do, especially now, right? We have been in a sleepwalking housing market. You all less so on the East Coast, but most of America has
Mhm.
been in a really sluggish market for going on 3 years now. And we still have a ton of agents. We haven't had enough deals happening. And many agents, many, and I'm sure many of your listeners, you're feeling that squeeze. There's stress and scarcity out there. So telling somebody that in order to address that, you need to do things that are different and break away, when the thing that seems secure is to try and mimic what the top producer in your office or the gal who's crushing it on Instagram in your neighborhood is doing, right? And those things probably just aren't for you, right? You need to find what your thing is. And that's a hard thing to do. It's a hard ask, I realize.
It is. It is. Are you shocked? Just a side question. Are you shocked that there is as many agents hanging around in the business with the lack of unit sales and just what's going on in the market right now? You would think that some of that would, they would get out of the business, they would fall by the wayside. But we haven't seen, that decrease that I thought we would see corresponding to a lack of unit sales.
Yeah, well, it's been slow this time. I mean, you've been around long enough to remember, 2008 and 9 and those times, and we lost several 100,000 agents. The pullback has been less swift this time, and if you think about that, what's it cost to pay your association dues, your MLS deals, E&O, that type of stuff, about $2,000-3,000 a year, and if you happen to get one transaction out of it, the ROI on that's pretty good, right? If you stumble into one transaction a year, you've got it covered and then some. The median home price in the United States of America now is $400,000. It's significantly more in your market and my market. So I think people are hanging around because, look, they're gonna take a shot that maybe they'll get a deal, which gets back to my point about people. We have this long tail of unproductive agents that are scooping up no deals, one deal, two deals a year. And they would not be getting that business if people actually took the time to take the choice of an agent seriously. Again, it's incumbent upon good agents to explain to the world why they're good and to explain to the world what is a good agent and what is an agent who may be not so good. We have 1.4 million members-ish of the National Association right now. How many hundreds of thousands of those people do you think have no business doing something so important as helping people sell or buy a home? A lot.
That is very, very true. I mean, and ultimately, again, I don't want to get off on this tangent because I'm not here to badmouth our agents or our industry.
Yeah.
But I think there is a lot of delusions of grandeur out there that I'm like you had mentioned it earlier. I'm going to hang on because I'm going to rededicate myself, or I'm going to hang on because this year is going to be my year and I'm going to do things differently. But we all know that habits tend to make who you are as a person, right? And if you don't have the right habits, if you're not doing the right marketing, things really aren't going to change that much. And again, that's why we're having this conversation now is to help differentiate yourself. So I want to talk a little bit about digital now. So I saw you on Instagram talking about finding the signal through the noise.
Yeah.
And so can you talk about that concept and what that means?
Yeah. So as you know, Jay, and your listeners know, there's a lot of noise around the real estate industry. but specifically around marketing and winning business and building a brand. You got to do this, you got to do that. If you're not doing this, you're screwed. Everybody's doing this, so you need to be doing this. You need to be here, you need to be there. And AI. And if you're not doing this here and that there, blah 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 blah, it's overwhelming. Okay, all of this, of course, is really tactical sort of chatter noise. What we really strive for is to try and turn down that noise and to focus on what we call the signal, which is the strategic, thoughtful, brand-centric approach to building a business in real estate. And that's the signal. The noise is the noise, and it's overwhelming. I mean, you go onto YouTube, as you have and I have, and you start looking at all the people yelling at you, telling you you need to do this or you need to do that. And it's overwhelming. It's absolutely overwhelming. And what is lost in all of that is thinking about your customer, thinking about your unique value story, thinking about what kind of brand you want to build over time, which is not a good place to be.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's such a simple answer, right? And I want to follow up on social because, I see agents that are out there trying to offer more original content now and to be memorable, to stand out.
Yeah.
Some do it with humor. Some do it with shock value. Some are really good at it. There's some stuff out there that just people are so creative and so funny out there. Yeah. But a lot of it is really cringy. I'm going to be honest. I'm sure you feel the same way. Yeah. Although I applaud them for having the guts and the confidence to put it out there. In your opinion, how do agents strike a good balance between being relatable in their content and their marketing on social and still being professional and earning people's trust? And that doesn't necessarily have to equate to social media. That could be in general.
Yeah.
But how's a good way to go about it, in your opinion?
Look, I've seen plenty of this stuff. Your listeners have too. And, we wrote about it in our weekly newsletter a couple of weeks ago. There's a growing trend of agents dancing, being vulgar, using humor, all this stuff. And you're right, a lot of it's entertaining. And a lot of those agents have gotten a great deal of followers. Some are making it work somehow. They're translating it into business at some level. I think trying to mimic that is a bad idea for most people, not because those things are intrinsically bad, because the people who are doing that successfully are doing it successfully because they're good at it. They're good at being funny. They're good at being good on camera. I'm neither of those things. So I'm not going to go promote myself on social media shorts. It's not going to happen. That's not my deal. I tend to write. So do what you're good at. I think in terms of the professionalism and relatability thing, relatability really comes from, and again, broken record, understand what is the emotional truth inside your customer and speak to that. That's relatability. If I know what's going on with you as a 35-year-old first-time buyer who's been in the workforce for 12, 13 years, has barely enough money to maybe buy a house when prices are at record highs and mortgage rates are at 7%, what am I feeling that you can speak to as a professional? Relatability is about connecting to the emotional truth that sits within your prospective customer. Relatability isn't necessarily making a fool of yourself or talking about yourself. Relatability is you and I connecting, Jay, at a level, at some level where there's mutual knowledge and understanding of each other. And that, I think, again, is something that people miss when they go about marketing themselves. Sure, you may be funny. That's great. Maybe you'll get some business out of it. But the long play here, the strategic play, is to connect at an emotional level with your prospective customer.
I was just going to say, it sounds to me what you're describing is having that emotional intelligence and that empathy towards the situation that your clients find themselves in. And
yeah, totally. Totally. And that doesn't mean, because I said something earlier about the how and like the nuts and bolts of it. And now I'm talking about emotion. Those things are absolutely related. So, for example, to take your 35-year-old first-time home buyer, that person cannot afford to overpay for a house. If they get into a house, they are going to do so by the tips of their fingers. They cannot afford to overpay. So how do you, as an agent, recognizing that anxiety, explain how you're going to help them identify what is enough to pay for the house they want so that they can get it, but not too much so that they overpay? Tens of thousands of dollars lie on that question alone.
Yeah, that's a great way to break it down. And obviously, when we're in such a stressful environment, everybody involved, I feel like everybody's in a bad mood nowadays. I don't know. I don't know if you feel that way, but yeah. I do feel like people are ornery, right? How can we speak to that? How can we alleviate that emotional fear that they have and frustration? I have a client that I've had for 2.5 years, and we've maybe seen 4 or 5 houses total because she is in a price range and her needs are such that only once in a blue moon something comes on the market.
Yep.
And we went to see something the other day, and I knew at the price point that it was going to have competition. And by the end, it needed a lot of work, and she was willing to do that work. But when you're selling $75,000 over asking that she doesn't have, she's out. And she's very frustrated, and I'm giving her the pep talk. We're going to find it. We're going to make this work. I promise you. We've been together for the long haul. I'm making this promise that I'm going to find you this house. But again, I think it speaks to having that empathy with people and speaking to their fears and frustrations.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, and that needs to manifest, if you want to scale a brand, it needs to manifest in your marketing. I see so much real estate marketing that's, I'll make it easy. I'll take care of everything. It's a piece of cake. I'll make real estate easy. Well, that's a lie. Real estate's not easy. You know that. Your listeners know that. It's hard. And it's not true for the client either. The better approach is to say, hey, look, it's really hard to buy a home right now, but I'm uniquely qualified to help you surmount this obstacle because of X, Y, and Z. And that's what I mean about recognizing the emotional truth that was inside your prospective customer, rather than spouting the same stuff that everybody else does, which is, I make real estate easy.
There's nothing you bring up such a great point. One of my sources of deep frustration right now is that you see these posts, and this has been happening through the pandemic when things were selling in 2 days, sold in 3 days. I've had 55 offers, right? Yeah. Well, what you're making it sound too easy. What hard work took place before you ever got to that point? What did you do in order to get the home ready in order to receive those offers, right? What makes you you? Why should they use you? It's not that the house sold, because quite frankly, you could put a sign in the ground and sell the property. It's not a question of when you're going to sell it. It's for how much you're going to sell it for.
Yes.
And that's where the nuance comes in.
Absolutely. And, to go back to my mailbox during that period, late 2021, 22, I would probably get a dozen of those postcards a week, sold for 50% over asking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, not surprised.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I know. So you've spoken with, in your job, your field, and what you've done for several decades now. You've spoken with so many of the top brokers, agents, industry thought leaders throughout the years. What are some of the strategies that you've seen that really move the needle not only in terms of engagement with clients, but also productive engagement that is actually leading to transactions?
Yeah. Well, the first thing, Jay, is to speak in a voice that is differentiated and to go out to the world with a different message and a different approach. I'll give you an example of a small independent brokerage that is not in your market. It's on the other side of the country in Pasadena, California. We did some work with them several years ago called Eva Lynn Real Estate. Okay, Eva Lynn, EVALIN. And they cultivated a brand that was deeply human. It speaks in a human voice. It tells stories about their clients. It demonstrates value along the lines of what I've been talking about. And they have built a very successful brand and business in a very high dollar part of the world because they're speaking in a way that's differentiated and they're speaking in a way that's human. And it's also presented beautifully. I mean, that's the part we really haven't talked about, Jay, is most real estate professionals and most real estate brokerages present themselves to the world visually in a way that actually creates drag or gets in the way of them doing business. So, that's another piece of the puzzle. But that's just one example that your listeners may want to check out to see how these folks have done it well in a way that is produced business.
Well, I will definitely be taking a look at that, but I want to talk about that drag. Like what does that mean to you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about most active, good real estate practitioners, they take great care in how they present themselves personally. You show up to a listing appointment, you look like $1 million. We take care with, the car we drive because, even in 2025, sometimes we drive clients around. We take care in how we talk to people. Our focus on scripts in this business, right, is pretty intense. But we frequently drop the ball when it comes to the visual experience that we put out to the world, particularly digitally. So do you feel better staying at a Hampton Inn out by the airport or staying at the Four Seasons? Well, of course, you feel good about staying at the Four Seasons. You feel better about yourself. You feel more open. And it's that same sort of emotional response that you're manipulating and cultivating through brand expression and identity. So most practitioners and most brokers do not show themselves to the world visually in a way that accelerates their business and opens up that connection between people. We don't look very good. That's an area where many brokers and agents could do a lot better. And it's just kind of a throwaway thing. We do a little logo and it kind of looks good. And we slap it on our postcard and, we do sign writers and blah, 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 blah. And it's just not very well considered in many cases.
I think so many agents, especially I think since the pandemic, I think it's just become commonplace to dress down more nowadays. Mm-hmm. I like to go the opposite route of that. I'm still a tie wearing guy wherever I go. Maybe I'm old school, but many people have done away with the ties. But I have specifically won listings because of my appearance. I mean, let's be shallow about it, right? Like that's what people are looking for because I came in a nice suit. I had one person say, "I love your car." That's that's why I got the listing. I mean, I don't care how I get the listing. I just want to get the listing. Yeah. And so if it's appearance driven, and like you said, I want my brand to signify that we are high end. We are not, like you had mentioned before, like we're not a discount broker. We're not a discount chain. We're not Walmart. I mean, no offense to Walmart. Walmart certainly has its place. But that's not the vibe that I want for my team and my brand.
Yeah. Your visual identity is either accelerating everything you do and winning your business, or it is a drag on everything you're doing. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we think about it. And how do we create visual identity? This is what we do when we work on a client project. Do visual identity that accelerates, but also ties to that unique brand character and value proposition. And if you get those things aligned, that's where things start to snowball.
That's a great point. So if I'm an agent, as we start to wind down here, if I'm an agent and I could only focus on one thing today to start standing out, what would that one thing be in your opinion?
I would sit down with a pen and paper, and I would write down, gather your team, a colleague, whoever, and write down what are the things that I do that others aren't doing? What are the things that I do demonstrably better than most agents in my market? And write those things on a piece of paper. And they may sound small to you. This is what I do to prepare a home for sale. I get a pre-inspection when that's really uncommon in my area. Whatever. It doesn't have to be huge stuff. What are the small, big things that you do that are better or different than most other people in your market? And those are the building blocks of a differentiated value proposition. We're so consumed in the day-to-day of what we do, whether we're in a hot market or a cold market. We don't stop to think that the stuff of your real value is kind of locked in your head. So get it out on a piece of paper, and then you'll have some puzzle pieces to work with to put together that value picture.
That's an amazing piece of advice. And in fact, I'm going to probably do that once we get off of this.
It sounds stupid.
No.
Yeah. But if you're forced to write it,
yes.
You don't have to think hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always like to reevaluate kind of where I am, where my brand is, because where I was, say, 15 years ago is very different than where I am today. My clients are different. My price point is different. Sure. My audience is different, and my target is different. And so, those are always being adjusted and always being reevaluated. And so I think you bring up such a great point. It doesn't matter how long you've been in, to be able to do that exercise is going to tell you a lot about where you should go from here. All right. So I got one last question for you. And this is a bonus question. So I want to finish on this. And before I ask this question, I want you to know that I'm being very sincere here when I ask you this. All right. I'm not trying to be funny, even though I do try and end on kind of a quirky question. Because I truly don't know what you're going to say to this. So this is going to be out of the box. I don't think you've heard this question before. Since you're a branding and marketing guy, I have to ask, have you ever seen the movie I Love You, Man?
No.
You've never seen that movie? Oh, man. No. All right. So for our listeners and Brian, who have not seen this movie, it stars Jason Segel and Paul Rudd.
All right.
And in the movie, Paul Rudd is a struggling real estate agent.
Oh.
And he happens to become best friends with Jason Segel's character, who happens to be a marketing and branding guy and an investment guy.
Huh.
And at one point in the movie, Jason Segel asked Paul Rudd to borrow some money for an investment opportunity that came his way. Yeah. And Paul Rudd ends up giving him this money, not knowing that the opportunity that Jason Segel was investing in was buying billboards across LA featuring Paul Rudd doing or wearing attention-grabbing things like wearing a Speedo, being dressed as James Bond, or even flat out just swearing and cursing on these billboards. All right. So, and the way that Paul Rudd's character finds out about this is that he's literally driving down a major highway in LA and all his billboards as he goes by one by one.
Oh, wow.
And
how have I not seen this movie?
I don't know. It's a really funny movie. You should
embarrassed.
Check it out. All right. So anyway, he's livid. right? And he's like, this is going to ruin me. I'm going to be a laughing stock in real estate now. Turns out the opposite happens, and now he's a superstar, and he ends up getting all this business out of it.
Yeah.
So, number one, as the branding and marketing guy here, number one, are you buying it? Would that work in your opinion? And number two, should I now stock up on Speedos?
Well, okay. You kind of froze me with should you stock up on Speedos? I'm going to remain agnostic on that last question, Jason.
Probably a smart move.
I would say, look, it could work. Sadly, it could work. Sadly, and it would work, I suppose, because of what I said earlier. That people just don't take the choice of an agent seriously, and I think it could work for that reason. I'll have to watch the movie, but I think it could work. I wouldn't advise it. I don't think it's the way to build a enduring brand. But I'm going to have to watch the movie. But sadly, I think it could work.
I think it does pose a unique conundrum because I can see it definitely working. Yeah. And I wanted to get your take on it because you're the expert. And you talk, and this kind of speaks to, and I'll end on this. This kind of speaks to one thing you would mention about the newer generations watching HGTV and watching Selling Sunset and all all these other shows. And I hate them. I don't like those shows. They're not indicative of what we do or who we are. But you said that it builds kind of a brand where younger agents younger people want to work with agents now. And it's more a trustworthy process for them than the older generations who don't tend to trust real estate agents.
Yes. Yeah. Our research, actually, we specifically asked younger consumers, do you consume real estate reality shows? And I forget the number, but it was like significant. I mean, a lot of people are consuming this media. And then we asked those people who consume this media, real estate reality shows, does it make you feel better, worse, or doesn't do anything in terms of your opinion of real estate agents? More people said it makes me feel better about real estate agents than feel worse. So I don't think these shows are hurting the reputation of realtors. With some people, yes, but more young people look at that and think, oh yeah, realtors are cool. Again, not understanding what it is that a good practitioner actually does. And billboards, don't get me started. A lot of practitioners do great on billboards. So who owns the billboards? The professional service people that own the billboards in your city. It's the personal injury attorneys and the realtors. Why? Because our compensation, the compensation of both of those people is contingent. It's contingent. So whatever, I don't care about who I pick because, I'm not writing a check unless a deal happens. So again, is that really the territory that we want to be operating in?
Yeah, it's very, very transactional, and again, we want to set ourselves up for long-term success with our clients, not just one transaction here, one transaction there. So Brian, before we get out of here, let's talk about 1000 Watt a little bit. So people that are interested in your company, let's talk about what you do, where they can find you, and how they can sign up.
Sure. So our website's 1000watt.net, 1000watt.net. You'll see what we're about, the work that we do. The best way to get an intro to us and connect is totally free. Sign up for our weekly newsletter. It's called The Dose, goes out every Tuesday. It is a little bit of sort of industry, here's what's happening, but it's mostly inspiration for marketing ideas, branding along the lines of what we've talked about here. So that's probably the best way to start with us. Get The Dose. It's free, and it'll give you a little bit of inspiration every week.
Yeah, and I read the dose this week. Our own Rajiv Saja was featured in the dose this week, which was fantastic. It was nice to see him on there. Rajiv's big time, so.
He's terrific.
Yeah. But anyway, Brian, I wanted to just thank you again for joining us today. Great words of wisdom from you. Appreciate your time and appreciate you hopping on early out there in the West Coast and giving us, some things to ponder today.
It was my pleasure, Jay. Thank you.
That was this week's conversation with Brian Boero. It was really refreshing to hear what Brian had to say about standing out in our crowded real estate space. Here are a few takeaways that I had in talking with Brian. Number one, Brian talks repeatedly about knowing your customer base. What makes them tick? Who is your target market? These are marketing 101 principles that you have to know who you're marketing to in order to gain their business. And I think that is something that we don't do a whole heck of a lot of, if I'm being honest, in real estate. We put out marketing pieces that we think are geared towards our clients, but we're not really thinking through the process. What are they going to react to in order for us to gain their business or make them want to do business with us? So often we reflexively put out these marketing pieces, whether it's just listed postcards, just sold postcards, and we get lost in the shuffle of 1,000 other agents in our area that are doing the same exact thing. So think about who is your target audience and how are you going to reach them differently than what the vast majority of agents are doing out there, which is that reflexive marketing where we just think we do what everybody else does. Number two, Brian mentions that a lot of consumers out there can't differentiate what a good agent is from a bad agent. And that brings us a golden opportunity to teach people what makes for a good real estate agent. Why should they choose you above other realtors? Well, let's teach our prospective clients out there what we do and how we can help. So how can we differentiate ourselves from other realtors? Show them what you do, show them your process, show them your success stories. Tell a story. I think that's always important to do in our business. Tell a story to your prospective clients. Last but not least, from a branding standpoint, Brian talks about it takes time to cultivate a brand, to cultivate that trust, for people to get to know who you are and how things work. So if you're building a brand, it's not just about slapping your logo on everything. It's about cultivating who you are and conveying that out to the masses. So strategically think about the long-term goals of your brand. Who are you? Who do you want to work with? And what is your ultimate goal with your branding? So think long-term strategy when it comes to building your brand. Well, that's it for this week's episode. We will be back in another couple of weeks with a new topic, a new guest, and as always, if you want to hear something that we haven't covered yet, please reach out to me, jason.ostrowski@foxroach.com. And if you haven't liked and subscribed to the podcast yet or left us a review, please do so. It helps us to reach more people. Once again, this is Jason Ostrowski saying stay safe out there, stay selling, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast.